Hi everyone, Religious Fanboy here again, and today we are talking about the Christian lessons and themes in episodes 3 and 4 of season 1 of Haikyuu. I really enjoyed. I I highly recommend these two episodes, and I noticed a lot of well done themes of teamwork and fellowship, much like when it is very hard for Christians to walk with Jesus and God faithfully, when we feel like we are meant to or supposed to be able to live a Christian life by ourselves and be able to do it successfully. Because when we make mistakes, the enemy will try to feed those feelings of self-hatred, making you feel like you're a failure and unable to do what God is asking of you, or that you can't overcome these sorrows or circumstances. But take it will take time leaning on God and being willing to reach out to other believers that love us and care about us, that are so that we can be reminded of God's love, and that we are not meant to and don't have to try to live a Christian life by ourselves, that there are other Christian they have other Christian brothers and sisters that love them, care about them, and remind us that we can surrender those burdens, and that God and those other brothers and sisters in Christ will and are willing to help us carry each other's burdens and be able to create an environment of discipleship and fellowship and spiritual direction in order to combat the enemy's lies, our temptations, and negative circumstances, and all other types of struggles we face in this life. These ideas are portrayed especially well in these two episodes through the interactions of Kosuke, the third year setter of Karasuma men's volleyball high school team, Hinata and Kageyama, and when we hear things like when we are struggling with those lies that the enemy tries to tell us, and in the midst of those times of our doubt and self hatred, it is or when we're stressed, it is easy to look at verses that say stuff like, and even despise verses that say stuff like God has, that says God has not given us, or God has not allowed us to face any temptation that we are unable to bear. But it is important to remember that that it is important that we walk along and live life with each other, helping carry each other's burdens and pointing each other back to God and reminding Him of His promises and His love to us, so that we are able to be reminded of what is true and overcome the lies, temptations, and attacks we experience from the enemy. I'm gonna read some passages and then I'm gonna go into talking more in depth about how the lessons and themes were portrayed. I'm also going to touch upon some talking points. My first talking point, when Christians are allowed and followers of Jesus are able, when we walk alongside each other, it is easier for us to overcome attacks from the attacks and lies and threats that come from the enemy or Satan. Yeah. Um. The first passage I want to read tonight, I'm going to be reading from the ESV. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up again. If two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. There are similarities in this passage to character development and interactions relating to the relationship Kageyama and Hinata have with each other as teammates and as friends from being rivals. Kageyama talked about in the middle of the game during a timeout how he struggled with relying on others because he is afraid of people not supporting him and him feeling like he is facing things by himself. And we see how Hinata is able to help him by guaranteeing him that he will be able to spike his sets and reach them. And when the other first years were picking on Kageyama and teasing him, Hinata was able to take tension off of Kageyama and through these interactions Kageyama begins to trust people and both Kageyama and Hinata are reminded that they are no longer they are reminded by Kasasuki that they are he specifically reminds Hinata that he is that Kageyama is not his most is no longer his most formidable rival, but is his most powerful and valuable teammate. And Kosuke was able to tell Kageyama that he was a good setter and knew very well and was able to assess very well what he needed to do and what the blockers on the other team were trying to do. But that for him to best help the team and be a part of the team, He needed to learn and understand the strengths and weaknesses of his teammates and friends in order for their team to be successful. Because though he could do and was capable of doing fast sets and was a very good setter, in order for the team to be successful, the setter need, needs to be able to assess the abilities and capabilities of the rest of his team in order to help them and himself be the best they can. Like how, for even though we are capable of overcoming the temptations and struggles we face with God's help, and that God has not given us any temptation that we cannot bear. When we get into the habit of believing the enemy, Satan's lies about us and about our relationship with God, we need friends and we need our Christian mentors and brothers and sisters in Christ to remind us of God's love and desire and ability to help us, and that He can and will help us overcome the things that we struggle with and the temptations that we wrestle with. My second, the second talking point for tonight's lesson is through communication and fellowship, we are able to help each other grow closer to be more like Jesus and overcome our struggles and weaknesses. For Kosuke's conversation that he had with Hinata was something that was needed and needed to be expressed. What Hinata had to say needed to be expressed in order for him to stop seeing Kageyama as a rival and someone he had to beat, and be able to see him as an ally and even a possible friend and teammate. And Kageyama, when he was stuck in his own head, worried about whether or not people were there to support him, he needed that reassurance and challenging from he needed the reassurance from Hinata and the challenging of and conviction that Kasuki was able to provide during that timeout in episode 4, so that Kageyama would no longer have to would be able to overcome the guilt and fear that was instilled in him due to his power hungry and selfish sets that he had been known for in the past. And the next passage is Philippians 2, verses 1 through 5. So if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete, complete my joy by being of same mind, having same love, and being in full accord with one mind. Do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. Let each of you not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus. When we only think about what we're going through, it is easy for us to give into selfishness and be overcome by pride and guilt and our needs and our struggles to the point where we are no longer able to see the struggles and needs of others, and it blinds us from the gift of freedom God has given us through the surrendering of burdens, to being able to surrender burdens and ask for forgiveness to and from God, and leaves us and blinds us to seeing how we are able to help other people with what they are struggling with, and that we are able to, and that God has placed people in our lives that we can go to when we are struggling with stuff and get help in overcoming those struggles and temptations and lies. With the help of our fellow believers and followers of Jesus and God, and from and help from God's grace and his desire to help us and take away our burdens and replace our heavy burdens with his light burdens. My third and final talking point is we are many parts of the same body, of the church. To be functioning the way God calls it to, we need to be able to help each other through encouraging growth and love for all the parts of the body to fulfill what God has called them to do. Like Kageyama needing to acknowledge the callings, the abilities, strengths, and weaknesses of his teammates in order to make the best decisions on his part. We need to be able to understand the gifts that God has called us to and the skills God has given others and the things they've been called to, because God has skilled us each in different ways. We are all called to fulfill the Great Commission and to grow to become more like God and Jesus. But we have been skilled uniquely to in order to help fulfill the good commission in ways that God has planned and called us to do in order to better fulfill, in order for us to grow and to be able to be used to fulfill God's plan of the Great Commission and be able to love God with every aspect of ourselves and love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And and like when germs enter our body, our white blood cells have to work together and come together to get rid of the virus and the illness in order for the rest of our body to be functioning healthy. We need to be reminded that God intended us to carry each other's burdens and to lean on God and know that He loves us and wants to help us and desires to replace our heavy burdens with His light ones and desires for us to love each other and glorify God through our actions and compassion we showed towards each other through caring for and carrying each other's burdens. And with that being said, may God be with you. I hope that you take away from this lesson and these episodes whatever God intended you to take away from them. And with that being said, the next video will be in 2 weeks. The next video like this, I might be changing the name of the ministry reviews to something else, just to kind of make the name easier to understand what the goal is. I'm thinking I'll either change it to anime devotions or anime as worship. But with that being, I don't know which I'll call it yet. But with that being said, may God be with you, and I will see you next time. There will be discussion question animatic. I do recommend watching the 2 episodes at least before watching the and answering the discussion questions. But with that being said, may God be with you and see you next time. Bye.